Captain Gray stood at the main viewport of the galactic research vessel Seeker, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the blue-green planet below. His tail twitched nervously as the scanned results appeared on the floating display before him. "This can't be right," he muttered, his scaled fingers tapping rapidly on the control panel. "Run the atmospheric analysis again." The ship's computer beeped in acknowledgement. The results came back identical to the first scan. The planet below them, classified as a death world due to its extreme conditions, was teeming with life. Not just simple organisms, but complex life forms that somehow survived in these harsh conditions. "Captain," called out First Officer Reed from his station, "we're picking up artificial signals. They're everywhere. Radio waves, digital transmissions, and what appears to be entertainment broadcasts." Gray moved to Reed's station, his professional calm masking his growing excitement. This was supposed to be a routine survey mission of the galaxy's death worlds, planets too hostile to support advanced life. Instead, they had stumbled upon something unprecedented. The planet's conditions were, by galactic standards, nightmarish. Gravity at 1 g, nearly double what most civilized species considered comfortable. Temperature variations that swung wildly from freezing to sweltering, sometimes in the same region within a single planetary rotation. Parts of the world were constantly battered by massive windstorms, while others experienced periodic floods or droughts. "Put the visual feed on the main screen," Gray ordered, his voice steady despite his racing hearts. The screen flickered to life, showing a city on the planet's surface. The research team watched in stunned silence as the dominant species of this death world went about their daily activities. They walked on two legs, exposed to direct sunlight, with only minimal protective covering on their bodies. "They're moving around in daylight," whispered Dr. Baker, the team's xenobiologist. "No protective shells, no natural armor, not even basic radiation shielding. How are they surviving?" The images kept coming. The creatures, humans, according to their own broadcasts, were everywhere. They had built cities in frozen wastelands and scorching deserts. They traveled across their planet's massive oceans in vessels that seemed absurdly fragile. They even hurled themselves into the sky in metal containers powered by controlled explosions. "Look at their young," Reed pointed out, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're allowing their offspring to engage in high-risk physical activities." The screen showed a playground where small humans were climbing, jumping, and deliberately spinning until they lost balance. The adult humans watched nearby, showing no signs of concern. "They're not just surviving here," Gray realized, his scientific mind racing to process what he was seeing. "They're thriving. They've adapted to every environment this death world has thrown at them." As they watched, a group of humans jogged past one of their hidden observation drones. They were running, seemingly without any immediate threat pursuing them. Their bodies were covered in water droplets, sweat, the computer identified it as, and yet they continued their voluntary exertion. "Are they training?" Baker asked incredulously. "In this gravity? In this heat?" Gray made a decision. This discovery was too important for a routine survey report. He needed to document everything about these creatures. How had they evolved to survive in such conditions? What other capabilities did they possess? And most importantly, what would it mean for the galaxy to have a species that considered these lethal conditions normal? "Establish a permanent observation post," he ordered. "Full stealth protocols. I want round-the-clock monitoring of these humans, and send an encrypted priority message to Central Command. Classification: ultra urgent. Subject: discovery of intelligent life on Death World." As the crew rushed to comply with his orders, Gray continued to watch the screens. Something about these humans bothered him, tickled at the edges of his scientific instincts. They moved with the confidence of a species that feared no predators, yet their physical form suggested vulnerability. It made no sense. Unless they were the predators. "Begin recording research log," Gray spoke softly. "Day 1 of human observation. I believe we may have just discovered something unprecedented in galactic history. A sentient apex predator species. Further observation required to confirm this hypothesis. May the stars help us all if I'm right. Dr. Smith adjusted his camouflage field as he crouched in the observation blind. After 3 weeks of watching humans, he still couldn't believe what he was seeing. As the team's lead xenobiologist, he had studied hundreds of species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for this. Today, he was observing what the humans called a marathon. His recording device hummed quietly as it captured the event unfolding before him. Research log, day 22. He whispered into his recorder. The humans are engaged in what appears to be a ritualistic endurance display. Hundreds of them are running across the landscape, voluntarily for what they call fun. He paused, still struggling with the concept. They will continue this activity for approximately 42 kilometers. A human runner passed near his position, sweating heavily but maintaining a steady pace. Smith's bioscanner showed elevated heart rate, increased body temperature, and microtears forming in the runner's muscle tissue. By all scientific logic, the human should have stopped. Instead, they pushed forward, even managing what humans called a smile. Update to previous observations, Smith continued. The persistence hunting theory is confirmed. These humans don't just chase prey until exhaustion. They do it to themselves, deliberately. For recreation. He shuddered slightly. The implications are disturbing. His communicator buzzed softly. Dr. Smith. Captain Gray's voice came through. You need to see this. Switching to your secondary screen now. The small holographic display showed footage from another observation team. A human had fallen during some recreational activity and broken their leg. Smith leaned forward, expecting to see the typical end-of-life protocols begin. Instead, what he witnessed shook him to his core. They're putting the bone back together, he reported, his professional tone slipping. Not just stabilizing it. They're letting it heal. They can regenerate broken bones. His voice rose in pitch. Captain, do you understand what this means? They treat severe physical damage as a temporary inconvenience. The footage continued, showing the injured human leaving a medical facility with a supportive device on their leg. They call it a cast, Captain Gray explained. And according to their medical databases, this is routine. They even have a tradition of writing messages and drawing pictures on these healing supports. Smith's attention was drawn back to the marathon as a crowd cheered. More humans were crossing what they called the finish line, their bodies showing clear signs of extreme exertion. Instead of seeking immediate medical attention, they were celebrating. Adding to behavioral notes, Smith recorded, humans appear to gain satisfaction from pushing their physical limits. They voluntarily subject themselves to activities that cause pain, exhaustion, and muscle damage, claiming this makes them stronger. He paused. Previous hypothesis confirmed. Humans are the only known species that exercises for self-improvement. A young human child ran past his position, chasing what appeared to be a companion animal, a dog. Both creatures showed signs of joy in their pursuit, their movements suggesting play rather than predator and prey. Smith noted how the human child, despite being clearly tired, kept running. Most remarkable observation of the day, he continued. Human young are already displaying the species' characteristic endurance traits. They appear to be born with the instinct to persist, to push limits, to, what's their phrase? Ah yes, to keep going. As the sun began to set, Smith watched the last of the marathon participants finish. Many could barely walk, yet they raised their arms in triumph. Medical teams stood by, but mostly just provided water and simple nutrients. The humans called it sports drinks. Final note for today's observation, Smith recorded, his voice heavy with the weight of his conclusions. We must update the galactic database immediately. Humans are not just surviving on a death world. They are deliberately pushing themselves to adapt to even harsher conditions. They don't just endure. They chase endurance itself. He packed up his equipment, adding one last whispered observation. In all my years of xenobiology, I never expected to find a species that treats recovery from near-death experiences as a normal part of self-improvement. The galaxy is not prepared for humans. Tom knew he was breaking every protocol in the book, but his curiosity got the better of him. The junior researcher had disabled his camouflage field and was sitting in what humans called a restaurant, observing their eating habits up close. His modified appearance made him look mostly human, except for a slight blue tint to his skin, which he explained away as a medical condition. "Would you like to try our Ghost Pepper Wings challenge?" the server asked him, pointing to a colorful sign on the wall. "If you finish it in 10 minutes, your meal is free." Tom blinked his carefully disguised eyes. His translator had to be malfunctioning. "These ghost peppers contain capsaicin, a chemical irritant, correct?" The server nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, they're super hot. Really burns going down. And humans eat this deliberately?" Tom asked, trying to keep his voice steady. He quickly activated his wrist scanner, disguised as a watch. "Sure do. We've had 3 winners this month already," the server said proudly. "Want to give it a try?" Tom declined politely, but ordered a mild version to study. As he watched other humans in the restaurant, his scientific horror grew. They were consuming all manner of substances: fermented grain liquids, alcohol, carbonated beverages that would corrode metal, plants containing various toxins, and meat cooked at extremely high temperatures. "Emergency update to xenobiology database," he whispered into his concealed recorder. "Humans don't just tolerate toxins, they actively seek them out for pleasure. They have turned the consumption of defensive plant chemicals into a recreational activity. They call it spicy food." A commotion at another table caught his attention. A human had just caught a small falling container of liquid without looking, their hand moving with startling speed and accuracy. Tom's scanner confirmed what he had suspected. Humans possessed an extraordinary ability to calculate trajectories and intercept objects in mid-flight. Adding to physical capabilities log, he continued recording. Humans display remarkable throwing and catching abilities. Their hand-eye coordination suggests evolutionary development as projectile-using hunters. Note: most species lost this ability after developing energy weapons. Humans maintained it for games. His observations were interrupted by loud cheering. At the bar area, humans were watching others throw small pointed objects at a circular target on the wall. His scanner identified it as a game called darts. "Threat assessment update," Tom whispered, his voice shaking slightly. "Humans can accurately throw sharp objects for entertainment. Their ability to hit small targets suggests they could easily weaponize this skill. They choose not to, viewing it as fun." A group of humans entered the restaurant, laughing despite appearing physically exhausted. Tom's scanner showed they had just finished something called a night shift. They had been awake and working for over 12 hours straight. "Sleep pattern analysis. Concerning," he recorded. "Humans only require 6 to 8 hours of sleep per day and can function on less if needed. Some deliberately avoid sleep to engage in recreational activities after their work periods. Their endurance extends beyond physical activities to include consciousness itself." Just then, Tom's communicator vibrated urgently. "Junior researcher Tom." Captain Gray's voice was tight with concern. "Return to the ship immediately. Your unauthorized contact has been detected. Report to my office as soon as you arrive." Tom stood up, leaving some paper currency on the table, a fascinating primitive exchange system the humans still used. As he walked out, he passed a human child drinking something called a super sour slushy, apparently enjoying the experience of their taste buds being chemically assaulted. "Final observation for today," he whispered into his recorder. "Every warning sign we've been trained to recognize in potentially dangerous species, humans display as recreational activities. They aren't just surviving on their death world. They're finding new ways to challenge themselves beyond what their planet already provides. He looked back at the restaurant one last time before heading to the ship. Personal note: if humans ever discovered just how unique their capabilities are compared to other species, the galaxy isn't ready for that revelation. The research team gathered in the Seeker's main conference room, staring at the wall of holographic displays showing different human habitats. Captain Gray stood at the front, his scales slightly pale as he processed the latest data. "This is impossible," he said, gesturing to the images. "These readings must be wrong. No species can adapt this quickly." The screen showed humans living in environments that ranged from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts. In one feed, humans were diving deep underwater. In another, they were climbing mountains without breathing equipment. A third showed them working in underground mines. Dr. Baker, the environmental specialist, stepped forward. "The readings are correct, Captain. Humans don't just survive in these environments. They build homes there. Look at this settlement called Las Vegas. They built a giant city in the middle of a desert, simply because they could." "But how?" asked Reed, reviewing the data on his tablet. "Their bodies aren't particularly strong. They have no natural armor, no special adaptations. They're mostly water." Dr. Smith cleared his throat. "That's what makes them truly terrifying, sir. They don't adapt their bodies. They adapt their environment. When it's too cold, they don't grow fur like other species. They build heated shelters and make artificial fur they call clothes. When they can't fly, they build machines that can. When they can't breathe underwater, they create devices to do it for them." Tom, still nervous from his earlier unauthorized contact, pointed to another screen. "Look at this, sir. They're showing their young how to use tools before they can even walk properly. Tool use isn't just natural to them, it's fundamental to their species." The team watched as human children played with smaller versions of adult tools, learning through what humans called play. It was a form of training that seemed both efficient and instinctive. "There's something else," Dr. Baker added, switching to a new set of images. "Something that might be even more significant than their physical adaptability. They appear to form emotional bonds with everything." The screen showed humans interacting with various animals, not as food or threats, but as companions. Dogs, cats, birds, and even reptiles lived in human homes. The aliens watched in amazement as humans treated these creatures like family members. "They even bond with artificial things," Tom noted, pulling up more footage. "They give names to their vehicles, talk to their computers, and form attachments to inanimate objects they call toys. Their ability to empathize seems to have no limits." Captain Gray's tail twitched thoughtfully. "So they're not just physically adaptable. They can form social bonds with any species, even ones that should be their natural predators or prey. Do you understand what this means?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. It was Dr. Smith who finally spoke. "It means they can survive anywhere, adapt to any situation, and potentially ally with any species," he said quietly. "Their greatest weapon isn't their strength or their tools. It's their ability to change and form connections." Reed pulled up one final piece of footage. A human rescue team braving dangerous conditions to save trapped animals from a disaster area. "They risk their lives for other species," he observed. "Not for food, not for resources, but simply because they feel emotionally compelled to help." Captain Gray stared at the images for a long moment. "Update the mission classification," he finally ordered. "Humans aren't just surviving on a death world. They're not just predators. They're something we've never encountered before. A species that can thrive anywhere and bond with anyone." "Sir," Tom asked nervously, "what do we do with this information?" "We prepare," Gray replied, his eyes fixed on the screens. "Because one day, humans will leave their world. And when they do, they won't just explore the galaxy. They'll adapt to it, change it, and probably make friends with everything they meet. And that more than any weapon they could create, makes them the most remarkable species we've ever discovered. The Seeker's emergency alarms blared to life, yanking Captain Gray from his rest cycle. He rushed to the bridge, his heart's pounding as the situation displays flickered to life around him. "Report," he barked, taking his command position. Reed's fingers flew across his console. "Sir, a battle fleet just entered the system. They're not responding to hails. Classification: Raiders. They're heading straight for Earth." Gray's scales darkened with concern. The Raiders were infamous throughout the galaxy, a species that attacked developing worlds, enslaving populations before they could reach spaceflight capability. They specifically targeted pre-FTL civilizations, considering them easy prey. "They don't know," Smith whispered from his station. "They have no idea what they're walking into." The Raider fleet deployed in standard attack formation, 50 ships arranged in a precise assault pattern. Their energy weapons powered up, ready to demonstrate their technological superiority over the primitive humans. "Should we warn them?" Tom asked, watching the Raiders approach Earth's atmosphere. "We can't break observation protocols," Gray replied, though his tail twitched with worry. "But we can record everything. The galaxy needs to see what happens when someone attacks humans." The first Raider ships entered Earth's atmosphere, probably expecting panic and chaos. Instead, they were met with something that made the observation team gasp in amazement. Humans were organizing. Not running, not hiding, but coordinating a response with terrifying speed. Military units across the planet mobilized within minutes. Civilian authorities quickly directed people to safety. Different nations, which usually competed with each other, instantly began sharing information and resources. "Look at their communication patterns," Reed reported, his voice filled with awe. "They're not just fighting back. They're adapting their tactics in real time. They're already figuring out the Raiders' shield frequencies." The observation team watched as human missiles, primitive but cleverly modified, bypassed the Raiders' energy shields. The invaders had never encountered physical projectile weapons, their defenses designed for energy-based attacks. "They're using their throwing capabilities on a massive scale," Smith noted, recording everything. "Those missiles are just their natural throwing abilities amplified by technology." The Raiders, caught off guard by the unexpected resistance, attempted to regroup. But humans had another surprise waiting. They had turned their broadcast networks into a weapon, overwhelming Raider communications with signal noise. "Fascinating," Tom muttered. "They're using their entertainment systems as a military tool. The Raiders can't coordinate their attacks." But the most shocking moment came when the humans demonstrated their true terrifying nature. A Raider ship crashed in a populated area. Instead of fleeing the dangerous wreckage, human emergency teams rushed toward it. They not only rescued their own people, but even helped injured Raiders, treating them as patients rather than enemies. "Are they giving medical aid to the invaders?" Reed asked incredulously. "Classic human behavior," Smith replied. "They'll fight with incredible ferocity, then immediately help their defeated enemies. It's part of what makes them so unpredictable." The battle lasted less than 6 hours. The Raider fleet, broken and humiliated, retreated from Earth's orbit. They left behind several damaged ships, which humans promptly began studying and reverse engineering. "Send a priority message to Central Command," Gray ordered, watching humans already adapting Raider technology to their own uses. "Warning: Earth is not to be approached with hostile intent. Humans are not prey. They are apex predators who will fight to protect not just themselves, but anyone they consider under their protection." "Sir," Reed interjected, "the humans are celebrating. They're treating this invasion like some kind of global victory party." Gray nodded solemnly. Add to the report, humans don't just survive combat. They thrive on overcoming challenges. The Raiders didn't just fail to conquer Earth. They accidentally united humanity and gave them access to advanced technology. "Should we be worried?" Tom asked, watching humans excitedly examining the alien wreckage. "No," Gray replied. We should be thankful they seem more interested in making friends than conquering others. Because after today, one thing is clear. Humanity could probably conquer the galaxy if they wanted to. They just don't seem interested in doing so. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Captain Gray stepped up to the presentation platform. 300 representatives from different species watched as he activated his holographic display, showing Earth floating in space. Honored council members, Gray began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. I am here to report on species 47b, known to themselves as humans. What we discovered on Earth will change our understanding of life itself. The first image showed a human running a marathon. Humans are classified as endurance predators. They don't kill with poison, claws, or superior strength. They hunt by chasing prey until it collapses from exhaustion. Murmurs spread through the hall. A council member stood up, their crystalline form glittering. Surely you jest, Captain. No predator would waste so much energy. That's what makes humans unique, Gray replied, changing the display to show humans building cities. They turned this hunting method into a complete survival strategy. They can recover from injuries that would kill most species. Watch this. The screen showed a human breaking a leg, getting medical treatment, and then running again months later. Several council members turned away, disturbed by the display of regeneration. Most remarkable, Gray continued, is their resistance to what we consider deadly conditions. He displayed a series of images, humans swimming in freezing water, climbing mountains, exploring caves, and walking through deserts. They call these activities sports and adventure, he explained. They deliberately seek out dangerous situations for what they call fun and thrill. An insectoid council member buzzed in alarm. They intentionally risk death for entertainment. Correct, Gray replied. And that's not all. Observe their eating habits. The display showed humans eating various foods. They can digest substances that would poison most species. They even enjoy foods that cause pain. They call it spicy. The council hall erupted in shocked discussions. Gray waited for quiet before continuing. But here's what truly makes humans remarkable, he said, showing footage from the raider attack. When threatened, they display unprecedented unity and adaptability. They defeated a technologically superior force using creativity and determination. Then, amazingly, they helped their injured enemies. The council watched in silence as humans rescued raiders from crashed ships, providing medical care to their would-be conquerors. This combination of traits has never been documented before, Gray explained. They have the hunting instincts of apex predators, but also show advanced caring behaviors. They can fight with incredible ferocity, then immediately switch to helping those they fought against. He showed more images, humans rescuing animals from disasters, helping strangers in emergencies, and sharing resources during crisis. Their greatest strength isn't their physical endurance or adaptability, Gray continued. It's their ability to form bonds with any species, to protect those weaker than themselves, and to turn enemies into allies. An elder council member rose slowly. What are you suggesting, Captain? I recommend classifying Earth as a protected world, Gray replied. Not to protect humans. They clearly don't need our protection. But to protect the galaxy until humans are ready for full contact. They're currently advancing at an unprecedented rate, especially after studying the Raider technology. He showed final images of humans already adapting alien technology to their own devices. We have two choices, Gray concluded. We can treat humans as a threat and try to contain them, which I believe would be disastrous. Or we can prepare to welcome them as equals, understanding that they represent something entirely new, a predator species that prefers to make friends rather than conquests. The council chamber remained quiet as the implications sank in. They had just learned that the galaxy's most fascinating species was also potentially its most dangerous, not because humans were aggressive, but because they were simultaneously the greatest predators and the most determined allies any species could have. The vote of the Galactic Council took 3 days. Species that normally made quick decisions found themselves debating every aspect of the human situation. Finally, on the morning of the 4th day, they reached their decision. Captain Gray stood again before the council as the High Elder rose to speak. After careful consideration, the Elder announced, their luminescent form glowing softly, "We have decided to classify humans as a protected predator species, but not for the usual reasons." The Elder activated the central display, showing scenes from Earth. Normally, we protect species to prevent their extinction. In this case, we protect humans to give them time to understand their own unique place in the galaxy. Dr. Smith stepped forward when called upon, presenting his research findings. Our latest calculations show humans will achieve faster than light travel within the next 50 years. They're already experimenting with concepts that took other species centuries to discover. The council members watched new footage, humans testing rockets, developing AI, and creating new technologies at an alarming rate. Most surprisingly, they were doing it all while still arguing among themselves about the best way forward. And somehow, this conflict seemed to speed up their progress rather than slow it down. Even their disagreements make them stronger. Tom added from his position near the data console. They compete with each other, pushing themselves to improve faster than we thought possible. A new image appeared on the screen, a human space station circling their planet. Despite its primitive design, it had been continuously occupied for years. Humans lived in space despite having no natural ability to survive there, simply because they decided they wanted to. "We have also discovered something remarkable," Reed reported, showing data from their long-term observations. Humans are actively looking for other intelligent life. They send out signals, hoping someone will answer. They're not afraid of finding other species. They're excited about it. The High Elder nodded thoughtfully. "This brings us to our second decision. We will establish an observation post near Earth's moon, not to watch humans as potential threats, but to prepare for the day they achieve space travel. We must be ready to welcome them properly." Captain Gray's tail twitched in surprise. "Welcome them, Elder?" "Yes," the Elder replied. "Because humans have shown us something we never expected to find. A species that combines the fierce survival instincts of a predator with the cooperative nature of a social species and the protective instincts of a guardian." The display showed a final series of images. Humans caring for endangered species, cleaning their oceans, trying to fix their planet's climate, and reaching out to the stars with hope rather than fear. When humans achieve spaceflight, the Elder continued, they won't come as conquerors or as prey. They will come as something the galaxy has never seen before, a species that hunts not to kill, but to understand, that fights not to destroy, but to protect, that seeks not to dominate, but to explore and connect. The council members watched as one final piece of footage played. A human child looking through a telescope, pointing excitedly at the stars while their parent explained the constellations. "Let this be recorded in the Great Archive," the Elder declared. "On this day, we acknowledge that the galaxy's most terrifying predator is also its most promising ally. Humans are classified as a protected species, not because they need our protection, but because they may one day become the protectors of us all." Captain Gray stood a little straighter, remembering all he had observed on Earth. "And what should we do until then, Elder?" The Elder's form glowed with what might have been amusement. "We watch, we learn, and we prepare. Because when humans finally reach the stars, they won't just change their own world, they'll change the entire galaxy. And I, for one, look forward to seeing what they'll do next." As the council session ended, Gray looked one last time at the image of the human child staring at the stars. Soon, very soon, humanity would take its first steps into the galaxy. And when they did, they would discover that being the galaxy's most terrifying predator had earned them not fear, but respect. and maybe even a few friends who had been watching over them all along.